So earlier today, when we were working out with Steve, you said something because he was talking about how lean he was right now, and you were talking about like he was saying he still had some lines in his glutes and all that, and you were saying that you talked about when he had a hard time really bringing those glutes in, but then now he's having an easier time because of one time that he
Even
over
all
dieted.
season. Well, there's the thing is, you got to understand when you're dieting for the first time, you're losing body fat that has been there at the very end. Losing body fat that's probably been there since birth. I mean, stuff you've never lost before. That's why it's so hard to get in true contest shape your first show. And a lot of times, it's the last place to go is the glutes. And I'm kind of the belief that the first time to get the strider glutes, you have to just really, really over diet. And that's, I believe, what Steve did. I think it was 2009 or 2010. He dieted all the way down to the 240s, low 240s or something, which is really light for him. Uh, and and that was the first time he was able to get his glutes in. And ever since then, he's had strider glutes every show he's done. And I think that's kind of what wherever that stubborn area is, and there's the glutes area for a lot of people, and you have a lot of guys who just never ever get their glutes in, and I think unfortunately the way to do it is you almost have to take it on the chin one show and just over diet just to get that last bit off. But once it happens, the body seems to remember things, just like the body remembers. The more shows you do, the easier it is to get in shape, and eventually, like we were talking with Steve today, what his off-season diet is like now gets to be way more lax than it used to be. It gets to stay lean. Your body just kind of relearns to lose that body fat after it loses it the first time. The first time's always the hardest.
Yeah. So having to sacrifice muscle in the beginning,
Yeah,
is almost worth it.
well, and the problem is a lot of guys never get to that point. Here, this is kind of a secondary topic, but I'll go off on it. What happens with a lot of guys is they don't get in shape their first show. And say they do their first show and they're 193 pounds and they're not in shape. They should have been 176. Well, no one wants to weigh less their second show. They think they need to keep gaining. So the next contest, they could have it gain 15 pounds of muscle that year, but if they come in true contest shape, they're going to weigh less than they did the year before. So they end up coming in slightly heavier. Maybe they're a little bit leaner, but instead of coming in at 192 or whatever, they come in at 195, but still not in contest shape. And a lot of guys never get to that contest shape thing because everyone always wants to believe they're gaining size, and the way they gauge that is what their contest weight does.
Right. Well, and the other thing too to think about is if you weren't in shape for that first show, but you still took your calories way down, to get there, and then afterwards, you go on your little binge or whatever else, you go back to your off season or you get that. Well, the body doesn't really create new muscle cells, not readily, but it does create new fat cells, and especially in that state where you've dieted down hard, even though you weren't totally lean, but your body's in a state where it wants to add fat and create new fat cells, and now it's going to be even harder for you after that. So, and that's something to think about for everybody. But that's another way to get double screwed.
Yeah, and it's a common thing with young guys is they go through the cycle of not getting lean enough, and starting their first contest prep fat, because most people don't realize how lean top bodybuilders are in the off season. They might see a guest posing picture and think, oh, that guy's fat. But I guarantee you, if you take yourself in the off season, put on your posing trunks, and step on stage, you'll realize how much fatter you are. Even though in your mind you think you're leaner than these guys. So you start out too fat. You don't get in shape. You kill your metabolism. You suffer to get down. And it's your first contest prep, so you're not used to eating the food and starving. You have a horrible rebound. You pig out. So you're starting your off season not lean enough. You rebound too much up in fat. And it just creates a vicious cycle. What the top guys do is, eventually it just becomes a job. They don't get out of shape in the off season because they have to guest pose. So their contest preps are easier. They don't get as depleted. They don't have to suffer as bad. So they don't get those terrible cravings. So after the show, they don't have the binge, which allows them to start their off season from a much leaner position, which means they get less fat the next off season. And pretty soon, you got someone like Jay Cutler who looks, his guest posing appearances. It's obvious he's not in contest shape, but he is not fat at all. And most of the time he's leaner than the majority of the competitors at competing at whatever show he would have been guest posing at. Or Steve Kukla is another example.
Yeah.